Lesson 4, Brahmacharya, the fourth Yama. Brahmacharya is often interpreted as the practice of celibacy. Celibacy is something that you find, for example, in the Catholic Church. Priests are not allowed to marry. Although in England you have the Anglican Church, priests are allowed to marry, and not only that, women are allowed to be priests. So much more balanced approach. But Brahmacharya is actually a very interesting subject that is not only about sexuality. But first and foremost, sexuality. Sex drive is an instinct, a natural instinct that ensures the existence of a species. Because basically sex drive leads to babies being born. So it's a survival instinct. Now the reason why Brahmacharya, which does not mean celibacy or sex at all, but we will come to that. But the reason why Brahmacharya has turned into the subject dealing with sexuality is because sexuality is a very deeply ingrained instinct that can cause huge disruption. Now, you see in the second paragraph something very important. Brahmacharya means to elevate your attention to higher spiritual levels, to purify, and this is the key, to purify sexuality from violence, lies, and dishonesty. Basically, it means to elevate sexuality from the instinctual level to a higher, more divine level. The point is in the second sentence, to purify sexuality from violence, lies, and dishonesty. It is an instinct that, just like with the other yamas that we learned before, if we just follow our instinct, we end up violating the first three yamas. Can you see that? Violence is committed very often by men to get what they want. Sexual violence, abuse, rape. But lies are also very often used to manipulate. We can use sex to manipulate. Men can do that, but while men often engage in violence, women have a tendency to seduce and get things done using their sexuality. And the third one is, of course, one that comes together with the other two. When you take something that is not yours, which is what you do when you use violence, for example, to fulfill your sexual desires, you're also committing theft. So not dealing with our sexual desires, which are there, cannot be denied, in a sensible way, leads to the violation of the first three principles. So there is a huge conflict there. There is a huge disharmony as a result of this. So it is important. First of all, celibacy is violence. If you deny people their sexuality, they become frustrated. They end up in a knot. Their energy becomes blocked because sexuality is one of our strongest instincts to survival, in combination with fear. Fear is also a tool of survival because it warns us of danger. It helps us to avoid death, either by running away, fleeing, or, if that's not possible anymore, by fighting back. All of our decisions, if you look at it, All of our thought processes and decisions that we make in life are driven by fear and sexuality. So we cannot deny that. And when you have institutions, spiritual or religious institutions that impose denial of a very strong instinct, which is only human, it leads to all those scandals that we have seen in the past 20, 30 years. Those scandals have, of course, taken place for centuries, but it is now more and more coming out. In the Catholic Church all around the world, also in yoga circles, there are huge scandals of swamis abusing students, followers, and even justifying that based on spiritual books and what have you. Sexuality involves large amounts of energy. So there is a potential here on the spiritual path. If sexuality is completely mutual and consensual, it actually leads to large amounts of energy rising up. When one of the three yamas is broken, or two or three in combination, violence, lying, and theft, stealing, that pulls your energy down and it keeps your energy down in the lower chakras where those emotions are located. So when we purify sexuality of those three violations, that energy is free to rise up. There is a book, you can call it a yoga book. Yoga has many branches. Ayurveda is the medical branch of yoga, but the art of using love for spiritual purpose, that book is called the Kama Sutra. Then when I mention the word Kama Sutra, people who have heard something about it, they suddenly have those naughty sparkles in their eyes because they think that is an ancient porn book or something. But no, it is a yoga book. It's about energy. It's about harmony between men and women and how to use that to melt together and become a stronger force together as a result of that. It's a wonderful book. It's pretty thick, and the original Kama Sutra does not have illustrations. Just like other holy books, it's a text without illustrations. The modern Kama Sutra have illustrations which gives people an impression that it might be a porn book from the ancient people. It's not. It's a wonderful book. It's about how to use that huge source of energy that's being released when sexually active for spiritual purposes. And it happens naturally. That is, we have invented romance because of that. Eroticism. Hundreds of years ago, and still many people around the world, sexuality is just an instinctive deed, and it often lasts only less than a minute often, if it is experienced in such a primitive way. But as human beings, unlike animals, unlike the other beings that we share this planet with, we have the possibility, the ability to turn that raw instinct into something more beautiful. But the basis for that must be that it is free from violence, lies, and theft. Mutual attraction, consensuality. And that is when two souls become one. That is also what is considered to be the true marriage. Marriage is not on a paper in the city hall or a ritual in the church, but it's a true melting together of two souls, two hearts. Now, the other part of this story will surprise you. Brahmacharya has nothing to do with sex. It has been turned into that because ancient people apparently conscious of the huge disruption that sexual dishonesty and violence causes in society, they have kind of turned it into a taboo. That is the easy way out. The more difficult way is, of course, to educate people, to enlighten people. And for that, we look at the meaning of the word Brahmacharya. Acharya is a person who is devoted to something. Something who follows the path of something. At one point, because of my devotion, because of all the effort that I have put into not only educating myself, but also training people, educating people. The International Yoga Federation, they gave me the title of Yogacharya. Literally that means the person devoted to yoga, or the person who follows the path of yoga. Brahmacharya, Brahma means God. Of course, then you have to talk about what is God, but that is not necessary here. A Brahmacharya is a person who is devoted to the spiritual path. And with what we have learned so far in this course, I hope that it is clear that the spiritual path is a path that requires that we focus and that we try to avoid excessive distraction. That is why we learn about non-violence, non-lying, non-stealing. That is why slowly but certainly meditation will be incorporated into our practice so that we become more focused and less distracted by things that normally keep people busy and distracted. Brahmacharya does not exclude sex, absolutely not. It is a very natural function of the human being. Denying it only leads to frustration and excesses like abuse. Brahmacharya means if you want to relate it to sexuality, it means that you also, apart from doing your yoga practice, your asanas, your meditation, your reading of the scriptures, that you put your sexuality also in the light of your spirituality, which I have just explained just before. If you deal with it honestly and free from violence, lies and theft, it actually becomes a force that helps you to elevate towards spiritual levels in combination with the rest of your practice and studies. Brahmacharya, if you look at the 7 chakras, the 7th chakra, above Ajna chakra, which we discussed in the previous lesson, there is the crown chakra. The crown chakra is Brahmarandra. Brahmarandra, so you see the word Brahma coming back there. Brahmarandra means the cavity of God. If you contemplate that a little bit, you understand maybe a little bit more my idea of what God is. Because you may have heard this before, but everybody is a little bit of God. But it doesn't manifest in most people because there is no energy in the 7th chakra, in the crown chakra. That is why people commit violence, lie and lying and theft. And that's why people can harm or hurt other people for their only to obtain their own objectives, to follow their own desires. Yoga practice, if done correctly, leads to energy rising up. It fuels the higher chakras. It leads to the manifestation of the crown chakra, where your royal characteristics are located. But according to this philosophy, the seventh chakra is called Brahmacharya. So what is located there is Brahma, is God. So my idea of God is not that there is somebody up on a cloud up there that is watching over me and throws thunder and lightning at me when I commit sins or something like that, something that I learned as a child. But it is much more sophisticated than that. The universe is a living being. To understand that, look at the organization of the universe. Our Milky Way, a galaxy, alone has billions of stars, billions of suns. Many of those suns are surrounded by planets, like our sun is surrounded by planets. The miracle is that they all move in very organized ways. It doesn't clash, it doesn't crash. It has a very organized pattern, balanced. That in itself is a miracle. Now, this galaxy, our Milky Way, existing of billions of solar systems, there's only one galaxy among billions of galaxies. So it's mind-boggling. But the universe appears to be one big, dark hole in which there are some stars and planets floating around. But the reality is, it is one organized, functioning organism. And the reason why there is life on our planet and not on most other planets, that in itself is a miracle too. Because organic life of which we exist, the cells, the atoms that we exist of is organic life, can only manifest when there are perfect circumstances. If the temperature is a little bit higher or a little bit lower, organic life just dies. Every cell, every organism simply dies. There has to be oxygen, there has to be water. The Earth, our planet Earth, the circumstances are so super fine-tuned that it has allowed for organic life to not only to start with just one cell, but it has culminated, it has resulted in the complex life as we know it today. And we are destroying it for that matter. But that is another story, of course. But if you realize what this is all about, you wouldn't. You would try to avoid destroying the environment that sustains us, that allows us, in fact, to be. So Brahmacharya is much more than just limited to that instinct of our sexuality. It is about life in general and how we live it. And as a yoga practitioner, of course, and this being part of yoga philosophy, this is about the crown chakra. Create the circumstances in your life that allow for the balance, the harmony that leads to awakening of the crown chakra, awakening of higher consciousness, and all those wonderful characteristics located in the crown chakra to manifest. Wisdom, deep insight, intuition, all located in the crown chakra. The reason why many people are lacking these characteristics is because their energy is below the diaphragm. They have only short moments of flashes of energy in the crown chakra that allows them sometimes to have some insight. But for the rest, we are functioning most of the time below the diaphragm. And yoga is the art of more and more functioning on higher levels of consciousness. That is Brahmacharya. And to be able to do that, you have to create the circumstances. That is why temples and monasteries were built, far from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, often high up on a mountain or far deep into a forest, away from all distractions, in peace and quiet and surrounded by abundance of food sources, natural food sources. But also, if you look at it on a more contemporary level, there are still schools where they separate boys and girls. They do that for this reason. It's a little bit misguided, because boys and girls are of course developing, and their sexuality is awakening sexuality is part of that process, and for the sake of pure intellectual endeavor in school, they separate boys and girls, which could later lead to unnecessary relational problems that boys don't know how to be in a relationship with a girl. So patriarchal society is based on this estrangement of the reality. When I came to Korea, practically all schools were either boy or girl school. They were segregated. It is changing. More and more schools are nowadays mixed, but there are still schools in Korea that are separated. The purpose of doing so is, of course, a lofty goal. They want children growing into adulthood intellectually very well developed, but they overlook the issue that it actually can also lead to distortion of people's sexuality. Disconnection. You see on page 2 on the top, some years after I wrote all these texts, somebody offered to edit the text and add all these illustrations. I haven't done that myself. A wonderful student of us has done all that work. You see that ketchup bottle and a hot dog there. And the purpose of that is to make you aware of how the marketing industry works. The manipulation of your sexuality and your fears is being cleverly used by the marketing industry to earn billions of dollars. The whole marketing industry is based on manipulation of your lower emotions and desires, and you are not even aware of it. There is a book written about that. I think it's mentioned in the last paragraph. The title of the book is Hidden Persuaders, and the author of the book is Vance Packard. It's about how we are being tricked into spending money, often money that we don't have, so we need to go into debt with our credit cards. Many people are in debt with our credit cards to buy things we don't really need, but that make the big corporations very rich. The marketing industry is an intermediary between the big companies and the consumers, designed to fool you, to trick you into spending money, basically. And as a yogi, you will just simply become aware of that in a very natural way and not go along with that anymore. Look around you and you will see that most commercials, one way or another, appeal to especially eroticism. This is an extreme example. This is very obvious, of course. Most of the times it's not obvious. You don't even have an idea of how they are, of how we are being manipulated. But also fear. The financial world appeals to our fear, our worries about the future. Insurance companies, health, the pharmaceutical industry, banking industry, all appeal to our fears. But the consumption industry, the consumer industry, is appealing to our sexuality. When things are sexy, we are more inclined to spend money on it, not even knowing that we are being manipulated in such ways. So simply be aware of that and don't go along with it anymore. It will save you a lot of money. We will come back to that a little bit more when we discuss the chakras also. There are some poignant examples of how this works. Even products that kill are being sold in this way, like tobacco, for example, or fast food. But we will come back to that when we discuss the chakras. Questions about Brahmacharya? Brahmacharya is what we do. Learning yoga, practicing yoga, pursuing something different from the daily grind of the duties and responsibilities of work and care and especially the material life that we live. Brahmacharya is that extra dimension where you pursue to find answers to questions we may have and do something beyond the things that our parents and educators have conditioned to do. Okay, let's take a short break.